go south. It's hard to guess where people are from, but Hector, where are you coming in from today? I guess you're at home, I suppose.
Well, I'm under curfew, yeah, here in Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic, in the sweet, sunny Caribbean. I'm pretty locked down, considering everybody's has stopped meeting, and a lot of my clients are, like corporate retreats that come to the sunny beaches. And now they're actually I had in 2 weeks time, I had scheduled a cruise in the Caribbean for a corporate retreat inside a cruise. So as you can imagine, that's not a priority right now. Or nobody wants to get into a cruise nowadays. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Used to have my dream client list, Hector. Okay, so now we're going back into Europe, to Italy. Paolo, could you tell us how you're feeling today?
Well, yes, today it was the first time I went out of the house for shopping purposes. So I spent 2 hours queuing for the supermarket. So it was nice because I could get in touch with the spring. Actually, this is a complex time, but it's also a very creative moment. So we are getting a lot of ideas, and also, like Fernando say, helping. So balancing the help of colleagues who are not so good in virtual facilitation with work, which is stimulating. So thank you.
Exactly. When there are constraints, there's always creativity, and we've got our share of constraints at the moment.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to pass the floor to Paul, who's joining us, who's Portuguese but based in Madrid, and he's also our tech host today. Paul, how are you feeling?
Hi everybody. I'm first of all, I'm understanding right now that we made a mistake in the choice of the tool, because we had so many responses. We are not expecting that, and that we should be using Zoom webinar, right? Because people are joining with their cameras on, and we're supposed to have a panel session, like a campfire session here, and everybody joins. Hi Bogdan, can you turn off your video? I'll explain in a minute. It's a wrong choice of tool, obviously, right? But on the other hand, as we are preparing the session, we would like every one of you attending that you would also have the chance to interact with each other. So we are going to be able to use breakout. So that's a little bit the compromise we need to do. And it's always a little bit like this when you go digital. You have to compromise. So please turn off your camera while listening to our wonderful panelists, and then by Jeffers' order, you'll be able to intervene and interact with each other.
I think we actually now have all our panelists on the line. So why don't we do a little test run with the breakout and let every individual on the call check in with each other. So we're going to break into rooms of 3. You're going to have just 3 minutes, and the ticker is already clicking. 3 minutes to check in with the others on the call. So Paul is going to pass you
again. Kindly ask everyone to turn off their videos except for the panelists, please. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So in a moment, we're going to ask for a minute or two of each person's experience. And Penny, maybe if you don't mind, we would start with you, but feel free to pass if you say, no, I want someone else to go. But we'll wait for the whole group to be here. One of the things I love about the breakout rooms in Zoom is people don't disappear to go get a coffee. You can kind of force everyone to get back on time and on schedule. All right. So the idea here is we're going to be asking questions of the panelists. So of course we want to hear what are the real experience areas of each of our invited guests, and especially the panelists. What I just found out is some of our people who are here as listeners are also deep experts. So I'm expecting this will be a very interactive session. But we want to know, what kind of questions can we ask you? We've got questions about the business, we've got questions about technique, but tell us a little bit about your experience and where you'd be comfortable fielding questions. If you're ready to go, just raise your hand. If you want to pass to someone else, that's also fine. Penny, could we Let me get your microphone. Yeah, very good. So Penny, tell us about yourself and your virtual.
Thank you, Jeffer. Well, I feel like I'm one of those interlopers who you talked about, who really isn't an expert at all in online facilitation, but I've had to rapidly kind of rethink what can I do over the last 10 days to 2 weeks. My in-the-room business kind of disappeared overnight, but also I had a lot of time on my hands, and I was also thinking, what about my client base or the field that I work in? So I usually facilitate conversations for people who work in sustainable development or environmental topics, and an awful lot of them will be in the same position, suddenly finding themselves working alone at home, maybe very inexperienced at doing so. So the thing that I did that I'd be happy to talk about is to set up a virtual coffee hour for people in my sustainability network, very much modelled on the one that IAF England and Wales, that Martin Gilbraith and others have been running for a couple of years at least here in England and Wales. So I pretty much modelled it on that. I've run 2 so far and have another one tomorrow morning. Over 100 people have signed up to get details of it. And it's really informal. We use Zoom, we have breakout rooms. I use slides to kind of get people settled in and set some conversation guidelines. And then and a bit of humor as well. So tomorrow I'm going to do a poll as to what drink people have brought with them. So that's what I've been doing. And why have I been doing that? I'd say there's at least 3 different reasons why I thought it was a good idea. One is to give me some gentle learning about how to do online facilitation, ramp up my own experience. The second is to provide something genuinely supportive for clients and potential clients. These are free, so anyone could join them, but it helps keep me in people's minds, if you like, as someone who can help them at this time. And it also helps to build their literacy of being an online participant and potentially also running their own thing. So I heard after I ran the first couple, 3 people got in touch with me separately to say that they'd set up something similar for the people in their street, for their camera club, and for their own clients. So people have been using the techniques that they've seen in action for other things that I think will be so useful to us at this strange time. So very much at the bottom of the learning curve, and here to learn from others as much as to share my own experience. But I guess I'm here because I represent other people like me who perhaps have done a tiny little bit of online facilitation, but for whom really it's not anywhere near the core of my business, but it's going to have to be. So I have to learn quickly.
Brilliant. Okay, so we may be passing some questions to you about community management and how to keep your client pool warm and keeping you top of mind with them. So whatever concerns they do have, they can see you in action and stay in contact in this distant environment. Okay, raise your hand if you'd like to chip in next. Otherwise, I'd call on Fernando again.
I was just looking at the chat and seeing the questions. There are 2 questions that can be combined. So how to convince customers to use online meetings instead of postponing or canceling. And the other one, it's about including co-presenters or tech supporters in our facilitation services. So maybe the answer for the first is that you don't convince anyone. But one advice is that just tell people that you are able to. Just show yourself as a resource for people in the companies or organizations that they need this kind of support, and they will find you. A lot of people are now, they don't have time even to look for resources. But by the time they have this time, they will find you, and they will find many other facilitators offering this resource. But you need to make clear that you have the skills and you can do it properly. It's not an improvisation, you are doing it properly. And about including people in your crew, it's the same thing. If you, for example, we usually project things on a screen in a face-to-face meeting. So you don't ask the client, can we bring a projector? We don't ask them this kind of question. So this second person as a support is out of the question. It's a part of the service. We need a technical facilitator and you need a facilitator working together to offer a good service for you in these online settings that people don't know actually. So they need to be they need to learn how to behave and how to use properly this space. So we are in charge of telling them what is possible, what is not possible, and what are the options to move forward together. So this is my...
So for our audience, Fernando, it's fair to say we could ask you questions about how to position your services. Are there other areas you would like to field questions on other than what's already in the chat function?
No, I think these questions on the chat are very good. There are three more that I just sent.
We're going to come to all the questions on the chat function in a moment, but I want to first just hear a little bit who we have in the room, and then we're actually going to break out so we can discuss all the questions, and we'll have 4,000 questions, and we'll have to zoom in on a few of the key ones. Okay, let's keep going. We'll follow that same order. So Rosanna, would you talk to us a little bit about your experience in virtual facilitation and where you'd be happy to field the questions?
Okay, I've been doing virtual meetings and training since about 2012, 2013. And I've tried different platforms throughout the years, you know, Adobe Connect, WebEx, GoToWebinar, GoToMeetings, the free stuff like Blue Jeans and team meetings and whatnot. And right now I'm quite familiar with Zoom. I love Zoom because it's easy, it's simple, and intuitive. I try to do my virtual meeting as simple as possible and as free as possible because most clients are not yet quite familiar with doing things virtually. So I really try to go to the lowest denominator. Free stuff is great. So if I can use a free account, that's what I would encourage people to do. I also go back to the basic. If I can do everything in the Microsoft Office suite or the Mac version of the same, then that's what I use. I try to integrate all the basic stuff as much as possible because there will always be technical issues. There will always be issues with participants who are not familiar with technology. And there will always be issues where one person cannot handle everything. So when I do contract work virtually, I don't do it, I try not to do it by myself. Now it's a little bit different in COVID, but I usually always have a co-facilitator and a technical support person. Otherwise, I don't do it. If the client cannot afford that, then I would basically say, think of other options. But now, of course, because everybody's in isolation, I kind of have to do everything by myself. And again, simplicity is the key for me. And I also try to integrate visuals as much as possible into the virtual work, which add another layer of complexity in virtual work. And so I'll leave it at that.
Very good. Thank you, Rosanna. Yeah, so, and for those of you who don't know, Rosanna's got so many different talents, but her skills as a graphic facilitator and a visualizer, inspiration for most would be curious to see how that comes across here. But definitely we have a lot of questions for you about platform choices and how to keep it simple. So thank you for letting that shine through. We're going to move to Hector.
Well, I have to say that my work in the virtual realm started more than 20 years ago. I started helping my university to move into online classes back in, what was that, 2001, I think? When they were given these laptops, this ThinkPads X380, these blocks that they were like bricks to every single teacher and then I started helping teachers doing that, and I got in love. I have to consider that I consider myself a technologist because of my background as well, and I've been doing this for a while now. And what I will say is this is an environment that you need to learn how to navigate around. If I'm going to go and do a facilitation in another country, I have to be familiar with the context of the cultural norms of the country. In the virtual environment, it's the same. It has certain laws, certain rules, more or less, I mean, that you have to abide in order to be effective as a facilitator. But you can be. I mean, people say, no, it's very cold, it's very informal, it's using it through the computer. People cannot connect really through the computer. I have seen people cry in a facilitated session because you can't make a connection. So is how you use the tool as anything. As I cannot make great drawings as Rosanna because I'm not a visual facilitator as a graphic recorder as great as Rosanna, but I can use it in a way that can help my group if I do it face to face. And having said that, there's some very interesting questions over there, and it's like people need to continue producing results even if they're connected online. And I do think that they're going to realize that they need support more than ever. Probably before they say, I know how to make a meeting, I know how to manage it, so I don't need a facilitator, and they don't hire you. But now they're in a new environment that, hey, I do need help, and they realize that there's much more than technology to keep them in track and connected.
Yeah,
I think we can provide a lot of value.
Thank you, Hector. It's brilliant. And I think we have a lot of questions on that about how do you create group norms in this online environment. So many people who are kind of new to it, it's just like a regular session. You need to kind of have some guidelines of ways of working together, but the cultural context is complex. So we may throw some cultural questions your way as well and talk about how to help our clients with that transition. Okay, this leaves us with one final panelist, and that is over in Italy is Paolo. I believe it's Paolo. Oh, hold on, he's on mute. I'm gonna unmute you. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think the two levels on which we are moving are those of pioneering, exploring, but at the same time creating enthusiasm. We in Italy were the first ones hit by the COVID wave. So we started reshaping all the activities already in the middle of February. And yes, personally, I have always been, although I have a background as a sociologist, I always have been a kind of nerd, you know, exploring and messing about with different techniques, technologies, even with facilitation. I break methods and open them up. And so I'm doing the same at the moment by stretching technologies and the ways they work and exploring all the different possible approaches that can make meetings more effective, even within the virtual setting. I have been using a lot virtual facilitation and online meetings, and we are quite used to that. But of course, we were much more working in the face-to-face presential kind of activity. So what I can say is the first, I'd like to share our experience in transforming situations where people were saying, oh God, what are we going to do? We have already scheduled that. And convincing clients to move into clients that were not used to these techniques. And it's working very nicely. So I can tell you the steps and tips we have taken to transform meetings that were supposed to be in presence into ones that could be run and have been run very effectively in a virtual format. I also like some parts, like like with all methodologies. You could say, okay, are you an open space person? Are you a technology participant? I think all these techniques and platforms are good, depending on what you want to get. So depending on the goal. And at the moment, the really nice situation we are in is also that we are contributing to the shaping and the design of an online platform. So it's fantastic because we are giving tips to a software programmer that's also an agile, and giving, it's existing, the system, but we are also giving them feedback as we use the system. So we actually see, it's like telling Michelangelo, can you make the nose a little bit different? And you actually see it happening. It's not, you cannot tell that to the Zoom programmers. And it works, and it's a really fantastic and participatory tool. It's called Video Facilitator. It's from an Australian company. So for that, we have given them the possibility of being also kind of supporting them in the demos and as a way to use it. So I'm happy also to share that experience. Basically then pioneering, exploring, and bringing enthusiasm and the safety for the clients by showing that, you know, they have done it, why don't you do it? Oh, if they've done it, then I can emulation, you know, bringing the emulation. So we have some good clients who have switched from presence to virtual, and by bringing that in, they are happier to join. What questions would you bring, Jeff?
Very good. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Paolo. All right. So we've got a really wealth of experience there. It's brilliant to be part of that. What are we going to do now? We're going to go into a breakout group because I'm sure you have questions you'd like to ask these people and of each other. So in a moment, you're going to go find yourself in a breakout room, and Paul's going to help orchestrate that. We'll be in groups of 4. You've got the question I'm asking in the chat function, which is, what one question do you want to ask the panelists? So please discuss in your groups of 4 what's that single question you'd like to do. And then when you come back, one of you is going to write that question in the chat. So we don't have 4,000 questions, but just a good 10 or 12.
Okay.
Paul, is that fine?
That's fine. Jeffrey, one question, instruction, please. The panelists do not get inside the breakouts. You are required to stay here, right? Panelists, please. We are going to recreate breakouts.
Okay, we'll be there for 3 minutes, Paul.
3 minutes. You clock the time, right? So, okay.
Yeah.
Recreating rooms. And now, during the breakouts, please use the video and interact as much as you can.
Oh,
Yes?
there is one feature in a Zoom. When you set up the breakout rooms, if you click on options, there is an option to move people automatically to breakouts. So they don't have to click on the join breakout room.
Okay, thank you for the tip, Fernando.
I always use this because some people just don't miss the queue and just stay
With
here.
so many open windows, we end up not seeing that window.
And it's correct, you want us panelists to stay here, yeah? And not
Yes.
Yeah, this gives us 2 minutes just to check in on our process. This has been a kind of facilitation on the fly. So are you feeling comfortable with how this is going to work? Do you understand the process we're going through?
I'm not quite sure. So they're going to come up with questions.
They're going to come up.
Might be to individual panel members, or they might be to the whole panel.
Yeah, I'm thinking that probably I've noted some of the things that you said you'd like to take questions on, and probably we don't need to hear a perspective from each of you on every question. So if they have a question on community, I might pass that to you, Penny, and then we build on that with someone who wants to add on to that. If it's on tech platforms, we might pass that to Rosanna or Hector, but that's my thinking. Yeah.
Great.
It's an amazing group we are gathering here. Thank you so much for coming, guys. You are the top experts, world experts in the field right now.
Thank you more for your patience with us.
Just to remind you, Jeffrey, there's Martin Gilbreth, which is a newcomer, to refresh the pool whenever you feel appropriate. We can bring Martin in.
Is he here now? Okay.
And we still have many people who haven't joined the breakout rooms.
They have not joined the breakout rooms?
Yeah, they can be.
About 7 or 8 people outside.
Yeah, and
That's us, maybe. No?
well, and sometimes that happens, and
You can physically move them into a breakout.
and if you have selected the manually join, they have to click on join before moving. So
Definitely.
Should we give them 2 more minutes? Because 3 minutes to choose questions among 3 people, would that be too little?
The timing, Jeffrey is controlling the time, so.
Yeah, that's just about 3 minutes now. I was actually just stopping time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to help Paul Brandt. He's in background room. I'm going to help him in a minute.
So would you say a little more time for them?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, maybe 2 more minutes.
Extra minute or two.
Yeah, I noticed one incredible, fantastic thing of the breakout rooms is that people, I don't know who was bringing the example, Hector, yeah, of crying, you know, people, when they are in the plenary with 100, they are kind of more shy. But if you put them in couples of trios, then it clicks. Yeah, it's just...
It's a bit World Cafe. 4 is good, less than 4 is good.
You just don't want it to stop sometimes. You say, oh God, the time's up already.
Yeah,
I had
people
a
love the breakout.
question about if you had very clear instructions that you wanted to give people in a breakout group, I guess you could show them through screen sharing when we're as a whole group. Can you still do screen sharing when people are in breakouts, or would you need to?
Just the participants can share their screen of the breakout.
Okay.
You cannot share like a master share so everybody can see it. That's not possible yet.
Within the breakout room, they can share their own screen. Yeah.
So
Paolo,
you need them to see instructions in the breakout. How do you do that, or do you just? Is there not a way that
You have to do it in the chat?
No, you can send it via the broadcast. The broadcast is the capability that you can send a message to all breakout rooms when you're the host. Only the host that has that capability. You click on breakout, you click broadcast message, and that text is going to appear at the top of the video.
And you can
but
put
it's
your
only
instructions.
Yeah, normally I copy the questions into the chat. I copy the questions into the broadcast, and I send them the questions several times, so I can remind them, okay, what you're supposed to be talking about, so they don't go off topic.
Or if you want to, you can use Google Docs for people to just go in and share.
Just write stuff.
It needs a little bit more technical.
Let's I think we better invite them back because they're all
yeah.
Okay.
And just so we know how much time can we talk in every intervention, because we could go talking and talking.
Exactly.
This is something that we love.
Keep yourself to sound bites of a minute 30 is shall I do that? That's fine. I can get my cards. Yes. Good idea.
Or just give a 30-second warning.
Yeah. So because if not, I mean, don't get me started.
Wait, okay, here.
I could just. That's a good one.
Nice.
That's even. Now you're making me look bad. Yeah, I mean, I'm doing this. And you're getting that, of course.
That's, you know,
just stop.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yes, the questions. That would be great.
That's a good one, Penny.
Write them down.
Which one was it, Penny? Show again.
Oh, this is something I used earlier today on a call.
Can you put it closer to the camera?
I can see you.
Here, got you. Can use the chat function. Yeah, that's a good one.
We have a standard slide we stick up at the beginning of all meetings during the times we're getting in, which gives them instructions. If you can hear us, try pressing this, try pressing that. Often we can get the picture and then the audio falls over.
Meanwhile, Paul, can you bring back our people?
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the main room. As this process requires all of you to please turn off video right now, so we can have our fishbowl experience with our guest panelists. And I would also welcome Martin Gilbreth, please, to stand up, because he's also a panelist and he was not in. Oh, Martin, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
So
Okay.
Penny, Natalie, Ula, could you please turn off your video?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Martin, maybe we've given the other panelists the floor for just 30 seconds to a minute to describe your experience in virtual facilitation, so we know what questions to put in your direction. So could you just share
Okay.
half a minute?
Thank you. So hello, everyone. Martin Gilbreth with IF England and Wales, based in London. I've been working in and leading virtual teams or remote teams for more than 20 years, I suppose. So I'm not quite sure when the virtual facilitation began, but all of the teams and organizations I've worked with are about facilitation. So I think I was doing facilitation virtually within my own team and organization long before I started offering it to clients, but I've been offering it to clients intentionally since I went freelance about 7 years ago. And it's never been a big part of my offer, but a small part. And ironically, my take on the current situation and the current rise of virtual facilitation is that on my little sabbatical the last 6 months in Spain, I decided I wanted to travel less and work online more in order to reduce my carbon footprint. And boom, it's happening big time. So be careful what you wish for. One of the challenges for me up until now is that most of my client work has been substantial pieces of work that has involved traveling for several days at a time. And I've struggled with the notion of offering online services that would require me to be committed to an hour or two here and there, which would then get in the way of doing bigger substantive work. So in a way, this is a great opportunity for me now, not to have any face-to-face work that involves travel to get in the way, and to focus on online and then see if I can find some kind of balance afterwards.
Okay.
Anyway, there's a little of my experience.
Very good. Thank you, Martin, for sharing that. And we were going to take advantage of your presence here. Some people are already posting their questions on the chat function, which is fantastic. So we're going to jump in with one of them. And actually, while we did the breakout, we had a little facilitator moment where everybody, all the facilitators on the panel said, you know, when you do a breakout, it's very good to do it this way. No, you should use this tool. No, you should use this one. So we're just going to go public with that question, which was the first one posted. So Zoom breakout functions and maybe, yeah, I think Fernando, you brought it up first as the first kind of, you know, when I do a breakout, this is how I do it. So maybe you could give us your view on breakout rooms and how to make that effective. Fernando?
The question is how to make breakout rooms effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rosanna put a phrase on the chat. It's all about designing the process. So if you have a clear purpose on the meeting, you really have to craft them minute by minute. And someone also talked about having a nice feeling or crying in a meeting. And it just happened when we are connecting with people, and we don't connect with a bunch of people on the screen. We connect with a few ones, and with time. And how much time? Should be 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It makes a lot of difference. So to do breakouts is kind of easy. You can learn it easily. The key point is to design the process in a way that is not cumbersome. So you go back and forth a lot of times and don't produce a lot. So it's a matter of designing the process in a way that it's smooth. You can have time to produce, you can have time to connect, so, and make this in a sequence. So maybe this is a better use of breakouts.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Fernando. Does someone want to add on to that? Are we missing something? What about the group size of the breakouts? Or on the tool? Like I personally find breakouts so easy on Zoom and such a pain on WebEx, for example.
I have just one addition to this. The number makes a lot of.
And then Rosanna. Yeah.
If you put 3 people in a breakout rooms, the energy is kind of spiral. Chris Corrigan has a nice video about this. And if you have 4, it's a more stable energy. So you have to play about the numbers too. It's funny. And not every time you have the control of how many people you get, like an even number or odd number.
Thank you. Rosanna?
I was going to say, keep the numbers small. In the breakout room, I wouldn't do more than 6. And actually, for some reason, 4 is the magic number. And so if you are able to keep it small, that would be great. And always have a plan B, because when you put people in the breakout room, quite often they go, what are we supposed to do? You know, so Hector's idea of using a broadcast message to the breakout rooms to remind people what they're supposed to be doing or give instructions is a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, getting the message, whether it's through the chat function or holding up that sign just before the thing so that people get it visually, just like you would do in a regular conference. You have it on the slide, the flip chart, and the verbal, and on the note card, so they can't miss it.
Yeah, and be very specific about what you want them to do and what they want to bring it back to the big room, just like what you did. We want the group to have 1 question out of the 4 and put it in the chat. So it was a very specific instruction. I think it's really, really important.
Sometimes, sometimes what I do is, of course, is to show the question so that people can visualize the question. And I also ask, why don't you take a photo of the question so that when you are back in the group, you also have it with you. So people actually take the mobile, take a screenshot of the screen of the computer so that they can bring the question with them. Yeah.
Use their local technology.
Take a selfie.
Penny's raised again.
All right. Let's we may come back and we can maybe discuss this.
Penny was raising hand, Jeffer.
Sorry.
Penny was raising her hand.
Sorry, I don't see everybody all the time. Penny, get you off mute.
Reminded by what Paolo said about suggesting that participants might take a screenshot of the question. When I do my virtual coffee hour, and this is inspired by what Martin does with the IAF, England and Wales virtual coffee hour, I have had a slide set and I put a screenshot of what the breakout room is going to look like the instruction is going to look like. And I did it with polling as well. So in a minute, you're going to see something that looks like this. Mm-hmm. And when you see something that looks like that, you can click on this and that will. So in the same way that we might take the time to give instructions about writing on Post-it notes, 3 to 5 words, use a big pen, whatever your standard in the room instructions are, we can talk people through some of the things that feel maybe basic to those of us who are very familiar with it, but maybe confusing to people who are not yet very practiced at being a participant.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Penny. Just a process check-in. I think we'll do 2 more questions and then we'll go to a breakout so we can discuss what's really resonating there. One of the questions I see on the chat function was about setting the standards, the group norms. How do you create a way of working online, which probably would have been a good question to start with. My inner facilitator head is telling me. So why don't we discuss that one? And Hector, you brought that up a little bit about, so could we start with you? The question is, how do you establish group norms and a way of working in the virtual environment?
First, I would get the tech part out of the way. People need to feel that the facilitator is in control and demonstrating the specific tools or the specific information on how to manage the tool, give people a sense that, okay, someone knows how this is going to be working. And that can be a lot of pre-work. I normally, for any work that I do, I give them people that, hey, I'm going to be in the room for 30 minutes before, so we can check everything out before you need to. So so you can get the tech out of the way. You want people to feel that the tech is seamless. So it doesn't get in the way of the conversation. That would be one. And the second would be is you can if the team does not have a lot of experience on online work or virtual, I would recommend some agreements, some rules of engagement, or however you call it, the rules of the game, whatever. And then ask them, okay, what extra rules do we want to include of how we're going to work together? It's important to include them because they will always bring stuff as you would do it in a face-to-face environment as well. I mean, that applies as well in the virtual environment as well.
Yeah. Okay, could someone build on that? And is there anything we're missing in this session, for example? Martin?
Thank you. I think I would say that I would do it more or less online, more or less the same way as I would do it in face-to-face. I mean, obviously, if you are online, then there is technology mediating everything you do, in a sense. But whether you're online or face-to-face, I think if it's a short one-off session, it may only be a few minutes at the start of the session. If it's something longer or more substantial, or especially a series of sessions, it may take a whole session or something longer and more substantial. Typically in an online session, I would do as much as I can asynchronously in advance of the online session, as you would actually in a face-to-face session. You know, the invitation would let people know how to get into the venue and, you know, to arrive early in time for coffee and, you know, this kind of thing. If I use a sticky wall in a face-to-face session, usually I have to spend at least one sentence to explain to people what the sticky wall is and what makes it sticky, or otherwise they're going to be confused and bemused by that instead of focusing on the content and the topic. So I think the principles are the same, and of course the implementation is different simply according to the space and the technology that you're using.
Very good. All right, I think we're kind of covering that. We didn't do any kind of ground rules today. Do you think there's something missing in this call? Maybe someone, Martin or another, add on that?
If I may, probably if I may have suggested that just a quick shot of what are the rules of how we're going to do it. So you reinforce visually instead of only audio, but via audio, just present it. Okay, these are the rules. And because this is a very specific format, I wouldn't ask the audience for them. Probably I would just, because this is more like a webinar. So probably just, hey, this is how we're going to work. Make sure that everything's working and let's go ahead. And probably.
Very good.
Jeffer,
Okay.
I'm seeing a lot of comments about adding in combination other platforms and tools to your virtual meetings. I would suggest that unless you are very familiar with whatever platform that you're using for your virtual meeting, adding additional tools will only cause confusion rather than helping you with your meeting. So I would say if you're using Zoom, be very familiar with Zoom. If you're using WebEx, be very familiar with WebEx before you start adding other virtual tools to it, because otherwise it'll just be a gong show.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds a
I
very
can
sound
just
advice.
add to that, Rosanna. One scale, like a scale that we have been using, is master Zoom and chat, and you can do a lot with this. If you are comfortable with this and your audience too, you can move forward. The next step is that using a shared Google Docs. And the third step, using a tool like Mural or Miro. So there is a level of comfort that people need to be used to. If you just jump to Mural, it's like you said, gong show.
Yeah. And it's not just the facilitator, but it's also the participants that have to be familiar with it as well. Otherwise, you're going to have technological challenges from everybody, and it takes away from the meeting.
Sometimes
connecting to that, and what we are doing sometimes is to have a kind of a warm-up session a week before, just for people to get used to the technology, even a light one, just to more like an icebreaker or a check-in session, so that people, it's not something serious to talk about. It's just to meet and to get the technology and to explain the tools so that people kind of navigate through the process, get some feedback from them, and then do the real one. But not half an hour before when you don't have any time to change things or to check if something doesn't go well, if people don't have their microphone. Plus, we also provide a handout with all the technological aspects, you know, this button is for that, so that people can read about it before. This is something we are doing. But this is more on the technical part than on the group rules, ground rules.
Very good. Okay, I'm sensing we might want to move to a breakout quickly, just talk about what's resonating. And then there's kind of a couple buckets of questions. There's a whole section on engaging, brainstorming, keeping it interactive. How do you create that kind of creative atmosphere that we have, that we're used to? And then there's a second thing that is, I don't see it here, but I would like to introduce it, which is about the business of this, positioning, selling it, price tags, revenue, business model, that side of the thing. So we would do that after. But first I'd like to hear from participants, or let them hear from each other on what's resonating so far. We've been talking about breakouts, tools, and kind of ground rules. What's the thing that you want to remember? So with the panelists' permission, we'll go into breakout rooms and we'll be back in 5 minutes. So Paul, we're going to need your help to get videos back on,
now,
and
thank you
people
so
automatically into the breakout rooms this time.
Thank you so much for the conversation. So now it's your turn to turn the video on while I'm going to assign you to the breakouts. So, okay, and now I'm doing automatically assignment.
panelists will stay with us.
We've just received feedback from several people in the chat box that about the format.
Yeah. What do we, which one catches your attention?
Well, they say that we shouldn't go to breakouts, that they want to hear more about their experiences than going into breakouts and talk to them.
Okay.
We are boring. Let them talk between themselves.
Well, the thing is, they have. I just compile a list of the questions on the board, and we have more than 20 something questions.
Mhm.
So it's just,
Yeah, I wasn't reading them carefully. Oh, by the way, Jeffer, your microphone in the last part was fizzing. I was writing a message to you. It was kind of cracking a little bit. So maybe if you have the earphones, it can.
unfortunately, yeah, okay.
I don't know
Unfortunately,
if it was just me or if everyone else was using.
No, I heard too.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
So I would suggest, I tried to answer some of the questions on chat already as we go along. But there are a lot of questions, great questions. Maybe we focus on that instead of doing more breakouts next. I don't know how many more you've planned.
no, that's fine. We can keep going like this.
Yeah.
Did you send everyone the questions so that they know exactly what question they are discussing?
No, we didn't.
So one thing that I'm seeing on just looking at the questions, it's all about designing the session, right? And especially
tools,
things that you can do beforehand, asynchronously, like sending content for people, and what you have to do when we are together with our brains on. So maybe we can
I can help
about this.
guide us through that process, right? So shall we, where's the natural starting point, on the design or?
Yeah. I would recommend that. I think that would be one of the most valuable lessons. Because actually, I don't know the rest, but it takes me more time for me to plan a virtual session than a face-to-face.
Oh,
If I'm in a
sure.
face-to-face, I spend
Yeah.
a certain amount of time, but for virtual, I have to spend more.
Yeah.
I know the rest.
It's minute by minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see how much time we put into this.
Paul, are you seeing Carolina's comment?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, actually, I was alone, so I would appreciate if you just put me in any room.
You are in the main room now with
Yes,
us.
because yeah, I left my room. I was alone all the time.
Welcome.
Of course, I can stay here.
You can see the behind the scenes view here. I think we're going to be back in a minute anyway.
So yeah, I'd say the planning, that would be a good thing.
Okay. Okay. We start with the design and planning. What about designing? Is it co-design with your client? Is that the idea, or is it more?
I would say co-design with your co-facilitator and technologist.
Also, yeah.
Let's talk about that aspect of who's in the team.
Never go to virtual facilitation alone.
Yeah.
Because your co-facilitator becomes the plan B if you get disconnected in the middle of a session, and he can pick up. And if you don't do that, then the whole group just, and if it's like a strategic planning or something important, you're really in a bad spot.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing you say that 3 is the minimum team size. Facilitator, co-facilitator, technologist.
It depends on your co-facilitator. If your co-facilitator is very tech savvy, then 2 might be doable. But I would never do it alone unless it's like a very, very small group.
Or if it's an informal thing, it's okay to do it alone and manage the tech part.
If it's the weekly meeting that you will always do every week or something like that, that's not an issue. But if it's you're doing a business model canvas with a group, you better have someone. Just
any high stake, big group size, important client, I would not do it by myself. You just can't manage everything and still read all the chat and try to assign things. And just too much.
Yeah, and make sure your co-facilitator is able to pick up if you get disconnected.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's what Rosanna said. Co-designing with the co-facilitator is key because you are both on the same page.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And making sure your cell phone is fully charged. That would be plan C.
Have all your devices ready.
Yes.
Let me just share with you, Rosanna. The other day I was using Mural on a Microsoft assignment. with Teams, and then suddenly Mural stopped to respond. You know, it was so crowded that day, and it was really a very bad experience. Especially Microsoft, they hate to use other kind of tools. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
so
have to be careful with that.
in a moment, we're going to invite people back. We're seeing the chat function. Does anyone have a suggestion on how we can? There might be bitching and moaning that they just want to. They don't want to talk to each other. They want to hear from us.
Acknowledge that so they will feel heard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the other option is to break out with one panelist in each room so that they can ask questions.
Everybody-
That might
like
be
in bigger
another option
rooms.
too.
So,
Yeah.
Like,
Paul, would you be able to deal with that? So, if we do another breakout, we will put a panelist. They can't choose who they want to be with, or is that possible?
Yes, that will not be possible to do it automatically.
But you can do.
But
Paul,
I
you can-
would do it this way. I'll create the breakouts. I'll ask the panelists not to join, and then I'll
Right.
manually assign.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So you have to create as many breakout as panelists, as there are panelists, okay.
Cool. Yeah, that's an idea. Yeah. But
Can I just check, is this a 2-hour session or when is it due to?
the only
Repeat
thing
that,
is
Martin?
it doesn't
Yes.
allow.
Can I just check, was this a 2-hour session or when was it due to finish?
2-hour session.
2 hours.
Because I was thinking I would only, I've got another call at past, so I'm sorry, I'll only stay for another half an hour at most.
Yeah, me too.
And I've had far too many calls already today, to be perfectly honest.
Now we can end whenever we like. It's up to 2 hours. So
I would, to be honest, I would recommend give everybody a 5-minute break to go get a cup of tea and go to the bathroom. If roundabout now, actually, if it's 2 hours is a very long time for a session.
Jeffrey?
That's a nice tip also to remember for the real.
I mean, maybe not right now, given that they're just coming
No,
back
they
from
just took a
breakouts.
break.
But
I think if they wanted that, they would have just done it. So
yeah, maybe they're doing that.
all right, let's bring people back, and we're going to dive into the design discussions and how you approach that. Does one of you want to be the first one to speak on setting the context for design after I lay it out? Yep. Who have we heard less from?
Any?
Yeah, any of you? All right, Hector.
Okay, as the novice.
Yeah, the novice.
Jeffrey, remember that you can still ask anyone that want to take a seat to join us, huh?
I didn't catch that.
Anyone that wants to contribute in the campfire can join us.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, so welcome back. We'll be starting in a moment. And Paul, you've closed down the rooms?
Yes, everybody's.
All right, so we'll ask you to turn your videos off, and we were just collecting feedback from different people. One of the comments we got was, let's hear more from the panelists. We love to do the breakouts. It's always nice to see each other, but there's so much we want to learn from the panelists. So we're thinking we're going to spend more time in the panel and a little bit less on the breakout. We'll do at least one breakout at the end. If you have questions or concerns about that, you can put it in the chat function. That's a great place where we're picking up all the questions. One of the big themes was, how do you plan for engagement? How do you actually design the program? So we're going to kind of pick up on that picture of, what does the design look like in your area? How do you approach creating it? And then during the break, we were just saying, sometimes it feels like you spend even more time in the design process when we're doing virtual facilitation. Hector, could you pick up on that theme?
Well, normally I would spend like maybe an hour and a half for every hour of actual facilitation if I'm planning. But I've discovered that when it's online, I probably take 2 or maybe 2.5 hours for every hour of facilitated time, actual time in front of the group. Because you have to go into very detailed, as Fernando was saying, going minute by minute. And you have to structure the software that you're going to be using as well. Because most software is not just a blank flip chart. You have to set it up. So a rule of thumb is plan to spend a lot of time planning and designing with your co-facilitator as well.
Yeah. Fernando, could you pick up on that when you talk about minute by minute? I mean, I look at those schedules, and sometimes it's incredible. But how minute, how granular is your planning?
Yeah, one way of thinking about an online meeting is to look at the general purpose. So this meeting has a general purpose of such and such. And then you have the purpose for each section. For example, one simple example. In Brazil, we are not very sharp on time. So the meeting never starts on time. It starts like 5 minutes or 10 minutes later. So you have to plan this 10 minutes in a way that you politely welcome people who are sharp on time and also wait for people who will be late. So we prepare this. The purpose is to welcome people and talk about, check video. So this is the purpose of this first 10 minutes. And then what is the purpose of the next movement is to present the agenda. So what is the purpose of the third movement, and so far and so on. And also on the next column, what is the method for that? And then you have lots of space to play. So what are my methods? So it's also a learning process. So which methods I'm using the most? I'm just presenting people using slides all the time, or can I do it differently? Can I ask a question and put people in breakout rooms? Use like a liberating structures or a top method? So we have to play with this, but maybe the most important part is what is the purpose of this segment and this one and this one?
Yeah, exactly. So always tying it back to the purpose, similar though, we would do that in a normal session, a live face-to-face session. So what's different? What's different in the online design that we just don't sometimes think about when we're doing it in a room? Martin?
Yes, thank you. I could respond to that. I think one thing that's different is what Rosanna was talking about earlier, the need for co-facilitation or having a producer or somebody to take care of the tech. I think actually there's at least two things that are different. One that's different is that because of the tech, generally you need more facilitation capacity for the same number of participants. But also I think you need more facilitation capacity for the same number of participants because stuff happens faster online. People are more focused. They generate more ideas more quickly, I think. There are more channels going on. If you're all in a room together, as a facilitator, you're basically relying on what you hear being said and what you see on the faces of the people in front of you and in their body language and so on. That's pretty much what you're relying on to decide whether what you're doing is working or whether you need to change tack or something else. In online, typically you've got, maybe video images, maybe chat, maybe there's another channel, maybe you've got a third channel between you and your co-facilitators and so on. So there's a lot more to pay attention to for the facilitators and the group. In order for 2 or 3 or more facilitators to be nimble and especially to improvise, they have to be that much more better prepared. And in particular, if you want to be ready for your lead facilitator to drop out because their internet connection fails, which has happened to me once, somebody needs to be able to step in without anybody noticing.
Okay, so we're going to come back to the design themes, but you said something interesting. There are many things, but about the subtle clues that we use when we're in the room. And it's actually one of the questions we had in advance from one of the other people signing up. It said, as a virtual facilitator, how do you get the body language, to the expressions, all the folded hands, all the things that we know in the physical environment? Do you have any tips for us on how do you really understand what's going on in people's minds and hearts and lives when you're in this virtual environment? And we could pick up someone else who wants to say on that. Paolo, any tips there?
Well, again, it comes back to the design. If you are using, for instance, some Google Docs, you can also see how the groups are progressing. So especially if you are divided between the functions of the facilitator, one observing, how the things are going, and another one checking how the content is being developed, and maybe have a parallel session where you can talk without being heard by the others in case you need. So you open like a parallel chat where you close your microphone so that the others. So that it is really a really nice teamwork, and as the example of Martin, it happened to me also several times. So you really need to be really fine-tuned with the other facilitators so that people don't notice that someone else is stepping in because you had to go out. In terms of body language, of course, here you have one great advantage. If you get the full picture, you can see instantly the emotions of everyone, while in a normal workshop as a facilitator, you can maximum see maybe the people next to you. So that's another tool visually. And also the chat, although the chat can become really messy, I wouldn't rely too much on the chat. It can become like a stream, and to go back and read it, it takes quite a lot of time. Another way is also to ask the people, how are you? To make just take a little bit of, show a sign visually, how is it going? And maybe define also some rules with the hands among the participants. The one of clapping is nice, that one. Yeah, applause, sí, applause.
Very good. Okay, and someone else has just raised their hand. It's Penny. Could you build on that a bit? To the question, either on the design part or on the subtle cues from the group.
Yeah, well, if I may go back to the design part, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I had some thoughts about that. So always when I'm working with clients, I ask them, what is it that you want to have at the end of this meeting that you don't have now? And so I think it's a similar process of trying to understand what the overall purpose and what the specific aims might be of different sessions. But I'm experiencing a sense of liberation, really, that things that would have been unquestionable in a face-to-face meeting, like the length of sessions, or everybody's traveled here, so we have to work for as long as possible in order to get everything done, or everything needs to be done back to back with no gaps between, because why would you all come together and go apart and come together? I feel a sense of being liberated from that. And I'm excited to explore that, breaking what might have been a whole day workshop down into sessions that take place over a period of time. But I'm also experiencing that thing of being slightly mesmerized, overexcited by the tools that I see in front of me. Already on the chat, we've got maybe 15 or 20 different named tools that have been mentioned. I've been playing with Lino IT, I've been playing with Miro, I've been playing with Zoom. I can see ways that they might work, and I need to, put it down. What's the simplest way that we can get the result that we need to get from this little section of the process? And then what's the simplest way we can get the result we need to get from the next little bit? So that's my observation about what's going on for me at the moment. And I'm finding myself confused by all the names and feeling ignorant and worried about my kind of how early on I am in the cycle. I hope in the learning cycle, I hope that some of my clients will feel able to co-learn with me. So that I might be able to say to them, this is a new tool for me. I've played around with it a bit. I think it's got potential. How would you feel about using it for this meeting? We'll do a test session, and then we'll do it for real. And then we'll also reflect and learn on the tool as well as on the content that came out of it. You can't do that with all your clients, but with some clients that maybe well, that is an option or a possibility to share the excitement about being on a learning journey together.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And that idea of keeping the technology simple is something that keeps coming up as a theme today. We had a nice comment there from Thera Song about, how do you get engagement, have an insight meditation, so use the tool as simple as possible, but you invite more profound activity on the tool. And I know earlier in my career, that was definitely, I would jam so many things into a program, and now it's like, just a few things, but ask for a really profound experience together to make it as meaningful as possible. Okay, I'd like to shift the transition a little bit.
Fernando wants to add something.
Okay.
Yeah, just adding on the liberation from Penny.
Yeah.
We actually also need to ask the clients who really needs to be in this meeting. As we can bring anyone in instantly because it's virtual, who really needs to be there? Is really that 12 people or just these 3 or 4 guys that will help us to move forward? So this is also to be considered. Make it as simple as possible and with as few people as needed.
Very good. Okay. People want to keep going on this one. Is there more to add? Yeah. I think one of the, Rosanna? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add something about design because really engagement or because in a virtual meeting, you do not have the benefit of visual cues because you only see a little stamp of people, right? And so engagement is really important, but engagement comes from design. And design comes from all the stuff that we've just talked about, right? So some of the couple of things that I didn't hear yet from our panelists is that make sure that you have breaks depending on how long your session is. I would say for every hour and a half or 2 hours, have a break and then bring people back. And more importantly is to do multiple dress rehearsals before you actually do the real thing. Because that's where you figure out what tech works, what doesn't work, how your co-facilitator and your technology support person is working with you or not. And all of those things are important in order to have effective and meaningful engagement in your session.
Yeah. I'm quite looking forward to doing this again tomorrow because I know it's going to be so much better than today, but I do appreciate what you're all doing now. Can we talk about the client's role in design? Because sometimes for us, we do it a few times, but for the client, they may be fresher to this. So how do you involve the client in that co-creation process and also set expectations about what's possible and what more might be possible? Yeah, Rosanna?
I would say the client knows what they want. I think it's up to you as the facilitator to say, this is possible, this is not possible in a virtual setting. And to help them choose the tools and platforms that is meaningful in order to get them to the results that they want. So again, depending on how comfortable your client is with technology and doing things virtually, it may or may not work. So for example, with the COVID, a lot of my clients are not comfortable with virtual meetings. So they rather postpone the meeting than doing it virtually. So I think that's a reality that we have to live with. And I'm not one of those that try to push and sell my services. I go with what the client is comfortable with. If they're willing to step out of the comfort zone, then yes, we can try it. But ultimately, is you work with your client to get what they need, to get the results that they want based on what they are most comfortable and willing to do. And then you co-design with them in some way so that they know that they're getting what they need.
Jeffrey, do you mind if I challenge Rosanna for a bit?
Please do.
Because Rosanna, that's obvious. Obviously, we should go with the customer. But don't you think also the customer needs to be educated on the value of online facilitation or digital facilitation or virtual facilitation, whatever you like to call it?
Yes. Of course, yes. But if they're really uncomfortable about it and they go, oh no, we really want to do it in person, then what are you going to say, right? So I think ultimately your client will tell you what they're comfortable with or what they're not comfortable with. You can push them and nudge them to the edge of their comfort zone, but you're not going to push them over the cliff.
Hector, could you add on that?
What I would say is start small. Provide time to your client that, hey, let's do something small. Let's try something that you can feel very secure. Just try it out. Because we have to, most of our clients, some activities can wait for 3 months or 2 months. But there's this pipeline of products that you need to design. And if you don't get the information right now, they're not going to come up for the Christmas season in December. So, if the client cannot, you say, hey, let's do something small, something that's not gonna crash anything, or it's not gonna. And you start sharing the possibilities with the client, because we have to educate our clients as we taught them about facilitation, because there was a time that they didn't hire anyone to facilitate because they thought that they were experts in meeting because they do meetings all the time.
Right.
So it's basically, we have to, it's an education process that we need to just go out there and say, hey, let's give it a shot.
And when you are educating the clients, what are the main areas? Like when a client comes to you with something and you want to work with them to transform whatever they're doing into something more compelling and working virtually, how do you approach that with the client?
May I respond to that,
Martin?
Jeff? I mean, responding also to what we've just heard from Rosanna and Hector, I think a key element of the role of the facilitator is to understand where the edge of a client's comfort zone is and a group's comfort zone, to understand and to help them understand what their aims and context are, and then on that basis to judge just how close to the edge of their comfort zone do they need to be, and for that matter, on which side of that edge. You know, there may be reasons and times that you want to push them up to the edge or even just beyond. There may not be. I mean, there may be times when you want to do the opposite, but that's a judgment call according to the aims and the context. When I talk to a client to design anything online or face-to-face, I'll try to understand with them the aims and the context and design a process to help them meet the aims in the context. And part of that creative process is understanding what opportunities and constraints the clients bring to the party. So for example, I'll usually ask, do you have a venue in mind? And online, I may ask, do you have a platform or some tools in mind? Right. And depending on what they say, I'll say, okay, well, tell me now, why did you have those in mind? And we can talk about the advantages or disadvantages of using that venue or those tools for this aim in this context. And referring to what we were saying earlier, we need to remember that every tool has a learning curve associated with it. It could be that tool A is best for what they need, but they're all familiar with tool B. So let's use tool B because it's going to be good enough, and we won't have to take them up the learning curve.
Right.
So there's also a question of to what extent you're just trying to meet the goals as efficiently and effectively as possible right now, or are you also trying to build capacity for the long term?
Thank you, Martin. So we're getting there's a brilliant side conversation happening on the chat function. So I invite you to join that conversation as a panelist or as a person experiencing this through the chat and watching. One of the points was the language we use. You know, you say the word webinar and people are like, oh, I hate webinars. You know, so it's like that negative connotation, whereas an online meeting, well, that's just the way we work now. So what do you, the changing of language and what is that language symbolic of? So those kind of patterns, could someone address that? What do you call your sessions, and does that change anything?
I think webinar is very much push information. Yeah. So you're not getting a lot of engagement with the participants, whereas workshop, online meeting, brainstorm, you call it what it actually means, because I think webinar has a negative connotation because most of the time people experience push information and they're not engaged.
Could we go a little deeper into that? Like when I love going into the online brainstorms, I get excited, right? So when we create that atmosphere of inspiration, motivation, engagement, what is it, how do you go about that in this environment when you really want that creative touch or that more, the creative muse, the inspiration, the brainstorming aspect? How is that different here?
So I recently just did a meeting the other day where I used Stormboard for brainstorming. The participants have never used it before, and they go, oh, this is like a real sticky. And I said, yeah, it's a virtual sticky. So again, but you have to be, like, as a facilitator, you have to be comfortable in whatever platform you're running the meeting on. Now I'm adding on a different digital tool. So if I'm not familiar with Zoom or whatever platform that I'm using, and now I'm adding something different, you can almost guarantee a bomb because you're not familiar with it as a facilitator. So you're going to have to be very agile in knowing what is the right tool, what you're good at, what you're not good at, or maybe you need help from somebody else to run that part of the workshop in order to make it effective. So again, I always go back to go to the basic as much as possible, make it simple, make it meaningful and usable for the participants. Otherwise, it's just bells and whistles. it dazzle people, but it may not really achieve the results that you want.
Okay. More views on Paolo? You talked about
Fernando was raising his hand. Fernando?
Yeah, one thing that we can think about it is using this asynchronous and synchronous time. So for example, if you are planning a webinar, why not just record your message in a way that people can receive the message in the time they have and they want. And then we set up a meeting to discuss that message. So this is two ways of using the time. And there is one way in the middle that is, with this message, go to this such and such place, can be a whiteboard, and put your ideas over there, because later on we'll be together online to see this stuff together. So you have now 3 different times happening. So instead of just one that we are used to, when we are face-to-face, we just have one time, the synchronous. In the online, we have this 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. We love that in the creative brainstorms. You give people a task by 3 o'clock tomorrow. We need 3 of your best ideas. And then you get together for the delivery, the excitement part, and let them have their incubation period offline when it's always better anyway. Yeah. Okay. Other
I'm
thoughts?
so excited about this. I mean, it's hard to say, of course, we hate COVID and the lack of freedom that we suddenly have, but I was suffering so much when I was attending these Brussels conferences with 500 people listening to 400 presentations on PowerPoint, and I just say, seeing the people being lobotomized, you know, after the 3rd presentation. So I'm so happy. What's it showing? Because it's shining.
I agree. Sorry.
Applause. Yes. So at the moment, suddenly people are obliged to work smartly. What's that? You know, work from home. So my organization will not oblige. If I'm sitting at the desk in my office in the organization, I am working. If I am working from somewhere else, I'm not productive. So even in the design of meetings, of events, I am so happy that this opportunity suddenly opened up. Like Martin said before, we can organize a meeting now, even in 2 hours from anywhere. Just people join just with a click of the mouse. They can come in and they can attend. Going back to what you were saying, what I normally do to make the client happy is to show them examples of others, to go through a work process of, you know, this has been what we've done, and see the results. And so going to Rosanna's, you know, stretching the comfort zone. I am bringing cases of others who have done it, so people feel, okay, I'm not taking so much of a risk if that big or if that small or if that organization, which is a bit like me, is doing it. So I think taking some time to show good cases makes, and also to show how the tools work after you know how to use them properly is good. Yeah.
So we could certainly go deeper in this. I just want to have a little check-in on time. So we're 90 minutes into a 2-hour session. I know at least one of you has to disappear in a minute. Martin, we're going to say goodbye to you, I believe. I wanted to invite a meditation to all the participants, panelists included, on what would be the most useful way to spend this last 30 minutes together. And we're just going to do that for half a minute. And at the end of a half a minute, I'm going to ask you to put it in the chat function in 3 words. More on engagement, more about creativity, more breakout, whatever it is that you think would be the most useful for this last half hour. Okay, so take a minute for yourself and think, how can we best use this precious 30 minutes together?
Excuse me, thank you so much for having me, and I'm sorry I can't stay.
Yeah.
Good day all.
Bye, Martin. Thanks for coming.
Ciao, maestro.
Halfway.
I love your signals, Jeff. Are you selling them on Amazon?
Absolutely, I am. All right. Okay, I think it's time to stop. So we're going to post that. So the question was, in 3 words, what's your suggestion to make the most of this last 29 minutes together? And we already see a lot of things popping up.
And that's the trap that no facilitator wants to be in. How to converge with 70 people, 71 people. And this is interesting, Jeffrey. I'm glad that you put it on the chat because I want to, I appreciate a lot the conversation so far and keep it simple, right? But on the other hand, there's limits. Hector? Hector.
If I may, I think this is a learning process as well for everybody, because like, okay, if you need to converge, you need to have the tools for that.
Exactly.
You need a specific set of tools. When you're in the face-to-face, you have the sticky note boats or you have other ways of doing this. In the virtual, you have to have that as well. So for example, in this situation, if I was to redo it for tomorrow, because it's too early for me and I wouldn't be able to participate, but I would say, okay, to take an opportunity to go through the text of what all the questions and then ask people to vote on them, and you can rank them on Mentimeter or some free tool as well, and then you can guide, and you could do that in 30 seconds, and you can go with that. And so I would say that there are many tools. I would classify them in different ways, but there are many ways of doing that. But you have to pick the tool for what you're trying to do, or you're trying to communicate, either in a webinar or in a meeting or an online workshop or innovation or whatever. So you pick the tool for the group, for the level of capacity of the group, because there are tools that are too technical, that the learning curve is very high, but they're very powerful and you need them for a long-term engagement. And there are others that are so simple that you just point and click and that's it. So you choose the tool for the context, for the group, and for what you're trying to achieve. So for example, right now, that would be a really nice tool to have. So you can just put it in there, let people vote, and then you continue with the process.
Got it. So definitely keep that in mind for tomorrow. I'm going to do one of those classic things.
Jeffrey needs to talk, and I kindly ask Susanna if you can turn your video off, because now it's just the panelists. Then you could turn the video on for the sessions. Yeah. Thank you, Susanna. Susanna is the chapter leader in Spain.
Before I make some facilitator decisions on how to focus the energy, let's hear 2 more perspectives. Was that, who was waving your hand? Was it Fernando?
I'm just leaving. I have to go to another meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Thomas.
See you soon.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. Okay, one other comment? No. Okay. All right. I see 2 broad themes, and this is always dangerous with a group of facilitators as a facilitator myself, but I'm going to make an executive decision, which will probably annoy half the group. But maybe some of you will be pleased because it will validate what you've written in the chat function. I see 2 wide groups there. One is on tell us about a positive story, a challenge, something that you achieved, give us a bit of inspiration. That's kind of one group. And the second is more on the business, the sales, the negotiation. How do you sell this stuff? How do you position yourself? So I thought we could maybe start with a quick round of business tips and then end on the positive stories to give us something pleasant to think about as we go off into our different.
And Jeffrey, are you going to do the groups with the panelists, the breakouts with panelists for questions? Not right now.
I was thinking no, but
okay.
So do you want? No one has said that, so I didn't say. We were planning to do a breakout where we do breakouts and you join with one of the panelists. We're down to 5, so
I can do a thumbs up or on the participant panel and see if that's
okay. Do you want breakouts? Please chat.
Yes.
Do you want breakouts? We could definitely, I would like to do a final breakout anyway on the what resonates for you, like what do you take away from this and what do you need more of? So we could do that with the panelists in the room.
Let's go to the participant panel, please. Yes, and use yes or no. Yes will be breakouts. No will go deeper on the panel.
Sorry, you're on the question?
Yeah, the question is, we go to breakouts, yes or no? And you can do it on your participants list on the right side. Make sure that it's displayed.
There's a lot of no's.
Yeah, mostly most of them are
Mostly
are
no.
replying on the chat. So
Let's go deeper, I think.
yeah, so we'll continue like
Let's
this.
see here. Yeah.
So could we, let's talk, let's focus, the focus is on business, sales, making some money, convincing clients of things. Maybe talk with and a positive thing. So like what has really helped you sell this to your clients, and what's your philosophy on that, if you have one?
So maybe I could come in, Jeff, and just say that at the moment, clients are coming to me and saying, well, we had this face-to-face thing planned. We don't want to hold it up. What can we do? So for me at the moment, with some clients, they're coming to me and saying, we want to carry on with this. What can we do? And I'm rapidly trying to upskill myself in order to be able to respond to that. Upskill myself, but also, network, because potentially that will mean bringing in somebody who can play the tech role or the co-facilitator role, or give me an hour's consultancy on a particular tool so that I can understand how it works, that kind of thing.
I think that, and that resonates with me. If I could add, I'm not a panelist, but I would like to add something, which is that we have our client relationships, and that is so central to everything. So those people who trust us are turning to us. And my position is just make it happen. So partnering where I'm weak on some of the tech things, to find partners there, because they need a full team, and helping the client shape that team on their side as well. So facilitating their process on what they need to do to get the tools in place, the people in place, the system in place to make it work. So it's just like orchestrating a major event, but this one happens to be online, get all those functions in place. Someone would like to add on that, on how you approach also pricing? And we talked about how it takes more time to prepare. So how do you, I mean, rates is something we never talk about amongst facilitators, right? So how much you charge?
It depends. If I may, I would say it depends sometimes on the software or the tools that you need that are extra than you're normally not paying. For example, I do have several tools that I pay for that the price is minimum, and say, hey, I can put this and it's part of my rate. But I definitely, when I sell it, and say, hey, you're getting me and you're getting the tool. So it's like a sales point. It's like, hey, you're getting me and you're getting the software, and you don't have to pay for it. That's one way. And another is, hey, if you want this is extra. For example, I'm right now doing a pitch for a corporate retreat, and I want to sell them the idea of using an app for that. It's a software that actually will, I think it will help engagement on the virtual retreat, because before we were going to have 60 people coming to the Caribbean. I know they're not coming, and they're all across the country, but I want them to create this environment of, hey, we're doing this event, but I cannot take the hit economically, because it's $1,000 of an extra app that I wouldn't use if they were coming here.
Was it Wova? Was it Wova, the one we used in Milan?
Yes, actually, yes.
That was really good fun, actually, as a preparatory tool for a large event. We were really hooked on it.
Yeah. So, for example, I'm using that as the tool. I want to use it as the tool for the remote virtual conference of the company. And actually now, instead of 60 people, they want to include everyone in the company. So it's going to be 120, because not everybody can fly. And they want to create a bigger event virtually. And so you can play with all of those, but you very, very clear, because it won't affect your bottom line as much. Because sometimes people want just, hey, give me one price and you take care of the sheets and the flip charts and the materials and all that stuff. They don't want to deal with that. But sometimes you have to say, hey, you want this, you have to pay extra.
Yeah. So we used to budget for flip charts and Post-its, and now it's apps and tools and Mentimeter or whatever else.
Of course, and they are saving a lot of money on travel and venues. So they can also cover such costs. If you consider the overall cost of their, even the time of travel is a cost for the company. So if they have to come to the Caribbean, it's maybe half a day of travel or 1 day of travel. So that's a saving on which you can also use special tools. But the idea is just like when you go to the cinema. Do you want a small medium, large, or extra large popcorn box, you know. And you can tell the client you want also this tool. That's an extra cost, you know.
There's other different types of add-ons too, right? So in a traditional world, we might add on some one-on-one coaching or some other types of supports and tools. In this environment, myself, I've been upselling film production, getting the CEO on film so he can share his words with the group. And that kind of video production where you can edit down their message, it's very efficient on the time. It's a bit like what we mentioned with Fernando with the asynchronous, synchronous learning. In 3 minutes, you can consent, 1 hour presentation down to 3 minutes, doesn't waste everybody's time. CEO's on point, or the project leader, whoever it might be. And that's something that they're happy to pay for. And at this moment, usually they would use their internal comms people to do that, but are not really able to deal with it because of the kind of virtual world we're working in right now. So, but we can get things like that done.
Yeah. So just to say, with some client work that's already, the price is already agreed, and it's the kind of client, it's a public sector body where it's a real pain for them to have to reprice things, and to the extent that, you just wouldn't do it unless it was a disaster. We've said, okay, so that included this amount for travel, and you will separately have been paying for a venue. Can we use that to help us pay for a tool that we don't yet already have access to? We haven't had that conversation with them yet, but that's something that we're talking about as a facilitated team. Is that a way of helping the client to understand that they're saving money in one area, and we'd like to repurpose that money, if you like, to give us access to a tool that we don't yet have access to?
Sometimes jokingly, I say that we are like a catering service within a larger event and so on, but we are offering the intellectual catering, not the gastronomic one. So if you take away the costs, and they are huge, of travel or venues and so on, virtual facilitation is much more convenient. Of course, it has to be planned well. It has to be simple, agile, lean, just like normal facilitation though. I mean, the difference is not so much. Perhaps through this process of working more virtually, we will become more lean and agile also in the presential work.
Okay. All right. There's a lot more we could share on this subject, but I would like to leave people with a positive note. So we're going to transition to this last topic before we do the checkout. And the topic is this: what positive story, what inspirational thing have you done recently that said, I didn't think this would be possible, but we did it virtually? So could you give us a good news story about what's become possible for you in this type of environment, something that others might take a bit of positivity from?
I'd like to start. I had, just because it was so fantastic. We were just into the first week of the COVID lockdown, where everything was kind of, cancellations of postponing, and we managed to convince a public body organization, an important region in Italy, that an event that was scheduled to be in presence could be run exactly in the same way. People there, we practiced, we went through all the things we have discussed about the pre-design, and had the 3 facilitators, 30 participants. So, and we did the survey before to understand what were the topics, a kind of like a pre-open space, and we received the answer. So we had 6 topics, and then in the end, people chose to work into 4 topics. But we had designed every working room so that people could actually go through 3 hours, go through a total individual, collective brainstorming, and come up with total really nicely designed projects. As Martin was saying before, if people are focused, they can get a lot done. And the happiness of the people who kind of said, okay, we can work again, we can share our time together, the enthusiasm that they were sharing about the possibility of going on in spite of, you know, the sense of resilience. We can get things done. And they were so happy. I want to, it gave us an enormous joy to see their enthusiasm and how they could in 3 hours get the work that they were planning to do in 5, but especially feel we are all working from our own home, but we are together in this facilitated space. So it was magic.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it is. That's great. You give us a, it's lovely how you can be a catalyst to make things happen for other people. Yeah. Brilliant. All right, someone want to bring a different type of story? Also,
if I may,
right.
I have been doing digital work, and digital is using digital tools in my face-to-face facilitation work for a while. And I had been planning on doing online facilitation training for a while as well. And it happened that actually we had planned to launch it after Easter for the first workshop, right, in Spanish. But people saw the advertising and say, hey, can you do an online virtual facilitation in-house for a company in Colombia? And they asked for it, like, it's like, but can you do it right now, like tomorrow? They asked, hey, we want to jump in, but we want to dive deeply, and we want to say, hey, well, wait for a second. And I did it last week. Right? I did the 10-hour training in 3 days, one after the other, 3.5 hours every single day. And they were really experienced facilitators, and they know their stuff. They know how to do a good facilitation process, but they just need the tools on how to manage the technical part. And they were able to deliver very interesting options. Like people can transfer their skills of face-to-face online. They have to just feel confident. That's one of the things that's like, you have to just give it a shot, try it. You're not gonna break the internet if you click in the wrong part. But actually during one of the workshops, as I transfer the host capabilities, just trying something out, the host that was doing the triad, I mean, like the exercise, they shut the room out and they kick us everyone out of the workshop. So in the middle of the training, and then we came back in, but that learning environment can happen formally or informally. So it's like, get 3 or 4 of your people. I mean, we all have a network that we like to work with. Just pick, invite them, and say, hey, let's come and play in this new playroom, and people can do the jump. Yeah. Just want to, like, hey, let yourself do it. Just open yourself to it.
It's one of the most empowering things as a facilitator is when you make things possible for other people, things they didn't think they were going to be possible themselves, and suddenly they have that confidence and the results. It's beautiful. Thank you, Hector. All right. Penny or Rosanna?
Sorry, I was responding on the chat. I was reminding people that there is a digital virtual facilitation special interest group on the IAF website. And if you are an IAF member, you can email, I think, Paul to join on Basecamp. There's a special group just for that. And similarly for visual facilitation, and there's one more, but I can't remember what the name was. So in terms of success stories, I would say that during COVID, there's just an explosion of free meetups, support on virtual facilitations that people could, at all kinds of levels that you can learn with and from. And I think if you're new to this, or if you want specific questions, join some of these groups that are out there that you can co-learn with people, and you can also offer your own expertise as well. So that for me has been a fantastic opportunity, because, with some of the free time that I got out of COVID, I'm taking as many free online learning as much as possible. So that's, I think free is good. Free is really good.
Low entry, high impact. Brilliant, Rosanna. Thank you. Yeah, it's a good time. All right, so we're eating into our kind of closing moments. So Penny, tell us something that has been possible. You started us off with a community. Where would you like to end us off with?
Yeah, well, maybe I'd like to go back to that, which is to say that I ran the first virtual coffee hour for sustainability stay-at-home people 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to run the third one tomorrow. I've built up a mailing list of nearly 120 people who want to get details of subsequent hours. They're really informal. They, for me, have been a way of dipping my toe into the water a little bit further, maybe getting up to my knees in virtual facilitation, and they have proved a really useful support structure for people in my kind of client networks and much wider. So I feel as if it is a service to people who might otherwise be kind of stuck at home and missing out on company and chat with people who understand the world in the same way that they do. So try it out. You're bound to have client networks. Try it out.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Penny. Can I add one quickly? The Cannes Lion Awards for creativity. It's one of the kind of hallmarks of great achievements in the advertising world. And I was running an online brainstorming some years back, but this one went down in history because it won a Cannes Lion Award. So we did a 1-hour webinar on using a creativity technique. And thanks to that technique, the creative team made one of the most famous brand campaigns to go down in history. So that was, you know, small intervention, huge result. It was really possible. We were thinking to do a breakout now to share, but I see people already kind of dropping off. So I'm thinking we're just going to come to a graceful close, but with a dramatic climax. Is that okay with the panelists if we don't go into the breakout room? Any objections? Okay.
I think everybody's so pleased with this panel, Jeremy.
Right. So what I would like to end with is a couple things that you should know from our. So I sit on the board with Paul, and Hector has in the past. Rosanna too. I mean, it's been we've been over the years. It's passing the baton from one creative force to the next, but we are really, you know, questioning ourselves and questioning what's the best way we can add value to the overall community of facilitation. How can we better serve clients? How can we better serve our facilitators, our members, and the broader group who follow our activities? And I wanted to highlight a few things that are happening and also invite your suggestions, because that's where most of these ideas come from. One is the special interest group that Rosanna mentioned around virtual facilitation. There's a kind of deep place on Basecamp where you can collaborate, or whichever different platform. There's many places you can grab in, so reach out for that. You can see the resource page where you saw this. If there are other resources you think should be shared, we are updating it. We put something up kind of as quickly as we could, but it needs work. We know that, so please help us. The second thing is the nominations are open for the Facilitation Impact Awards. You know, our primary goal of this organization is to promote the power of facilitation, and we do that through sharing stories of powerful impact. These are nominations by organizations. Both the facilitator and the organization get the award for incredible impact. And that is, you have a month or two to get your awards together. Thank you for sharing the screen there. And you know, personally, the way I see that is you have a little time now, invest in celebrating the work you did last year. So in this coming 6 months in the year ahead, you are in a stronger position that you can do even more. The other thing that is going to be coming around is the mentoring program. I know some of you, like Penny, have been mentors to some of our other members around the world. And that is about to relaunch. So if you're thinking you would like to be a mentor, you're a CPF, a certified professional facilitator, and you would like to do more of it, we need your help. It's a very satisfying experience. If you are a mentor at any stage of your career, you're moving into new territory, you'd like to get some help, someone to talk to who's been there and done that before, we can offer that. It's a minimal fee. It's probably one of the best bargains you'll ever get in your life, I think, about getting someone to be a companion with you on your journey. And the last thing is all of these social sharing things like this one. So we drew this together, as you can see, a little bit on the fly, but we try to do something that is meaningful and useful. And we're open to any suggestion, and we'd like to facilitate it with you. So if you want to be here hosting it, that's totally possible. Reach out to Paul or myself or anyone on the management team, or always the back office. So the office at IAF world.org. So that's Muji who answers the phone. That's the person who can kind of get it on the website. So Hector is also very aware of all those history of great web meetings that we've run in the past. So with that, I would like to say thank you very much to our panelists. Many of you are getting to know as friends over the years, but it's also, I feel, a real honor. And I thank you for sharing some inspiration and boosting my spirits today, and for the difference you're making for everyone who's tuned in to hear about how can they be better at making an impact in a virtual world or in any world that they're operating. So,
Jeffrey, just a question. Do people want to share their contacts as we did in the England and Wales? People in the chat can also kind of
sharing their LinkedIn profiles. If you want to put other things in the chat function, we can do that. So if you feel comfortable sharing your details, put it in the chat.
Keep in touch for the future. Yeah.
It's also being recorded. And Paul, maybe you can tell me, will the chat be then available?
The chat will be available, and that's another incredible value we have with online gatherings. It's much more powerful for networking than face-to-face. Can you imagine sharing all the contact details of a group of 70 people?
All right, well, I'm adding mine right now, okay.
Exactly, do that.
Okay, great. Well.
So we have some sun shining right now over us. So that means that soon these will all be over. And hopefully digital will be something not from the past, but from the future.
Yeah. Okay, so a message from me, great minds like to think, and that's what I'd like to thank you for, is your kind of creative energy and your special penguin who would like to say good day, good night, good morning, and see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to close the meeting now. Goodbye.
Yes, remember to save the chat though before you close it. Otherwise, you won't have the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry for reminding you that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jeffrey. Fantastic moderator.
Thank you.
And thank you for all the panelists.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye, Sanjay. Thanks for joining.
Stay safe.
Smile.
Bye, Tamara.
Wash your hands.
Bye, Carolina. Bye, Christian. Bye, Carolina. Sorry about the video.
Do the panelists want to stay behind a little bit for a debrief?
Sure, sure. I mean, we could do a soft ending, definitely, Rosanna. Yeah, so some people. I mean,
I'll recommend if you can stop recording, so it doesn't have extra.
Thank you.
Thing that you have to.
stop recording now. Thanks, Hector.
We can invite